Hey, everybody, I've done a few, not a few, quite a few, not quite a few, a lot of these interviews since we launched. Because there's so much good content out there that we're going to go on and on and on. And I got a brother that's the guest on the show today. He going to come on in a second and he going to blow your mind because where I'm located, we got snow outside. He gonna talk about the Caribbean. I wish I was in the Caribbean right now. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So, hey, folks, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button on a video. Any video, all the videos, some videos. Hit the notifications bell. Because like I tell you, I put a lot of different content up each week. And what the bell does is you get like a little bing. There's a new video to watch, and it's getting better and better, gooder and gooder. And then tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Now, I got a movie out. It's called Business in the Black: The Rise of Black Business in America. Amazing video, 75 minutes long. How slaves went to college, black millionaires in the 1800s. And I'm not just talking about Madam C.J. Walker at all. I found some folks that I know you don't know their names. I complement that with the book. Now, the video has got some interviews with people whose family started, whose somebody in their family had a business in the early 1900s. Black-owned hospitals and cab companies and barbershops, cemeteries. The book got 200 facts, so it's more in depth. Both of them are on Amazon, or go to my website, inspirationsbystrong.com. I got that out the way, and that's a good part of this. But, oh man, I wish I was in the Caribbean, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Slavery in the Caribbean. Oh my God, unbelievable. Y'all ready to go? Let's do it. Brother, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, hello. Hi, Mr. Brogdon. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be a part of your show. So my name is Omri Coke. I am an independent researcher. My passion for research, primarily in the field of history and science, has led me to pursue the development of a platform in which people with similar research interests can connect and collaborate on research and presentation. And just to give you a little background about myself, my family hails from the island of Jamaica in the Caribbean. And growing up in this country has exposed me to a firsthand perspective on the continued relevance of race in our world today. For the past 5 years, I've been studying primary source texts on the transatlantic slave trade and how it has contributed to the dynamics of our present situation. More recently, I've been doing research comparing the experiences of enslaved people in Central America and South America with that of the enslaved in North America.
I got some good questions for you, brother, because you just cited some questions.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, when did what if Jamaica is American territory now? Was it a territory of a European nation at one point?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was. Jamaica, it was in the hands of multiple European nations. Uh, when Jamaica was first discovered, it was discovered by Christopher Columbus, and it was really on his second voyage that he discovered the island. Um, and of course, there were still native people on the island, right? It was not uninhabited. He didn't discover a an island that was just trees and animals.
Sure.
No, there were actually communities that were living here, on that island. Um, and over time, along with the rest of the Caribbean, and that's painting a broad stroke, of course, but um, generally speaking, there were certain atrocities that were committed by the Spaniards and by other European nations in this region of the world.
Okay.
Um, and the native population had been decimated.
who came first of the European countries?
That would be the Spanish.
The Spanish came first.
Hmm.
And when they found it, and then now, from what I gather, a lot of the Caribbean islands had maybe one European nation that they were under, where Jamaica had more than one. Is that,
There was
am I saying that right?
so when it comes to which nation dominated on the different islands,
Yes.
it was usually one nation at a time. In order for one nation who wanted to dominate in a certain area, if they wanted to do that and there was already another nation there, they had to go to war.
Yes.
And that's actually the situation that was taking place with the Spanish and the British, at one point in time. One particular island in the Caribbean, which we're all familiar with, at one point called um, what we know today as really the Dominican Republic and
Yes.
Haiti. They share the same island. However, one half was dominated by the French, and the
Yes.
other was dominated by the Spanish.
Right. I got
Uh,
you.
that is a very unique situation, but in most of the cases that we see, it's one European nation that rules in one island.
Now, because the Spanish dominated, well, they were the first, let's say, to dominate Jamaica. Does the Spanish speak English, or do they speak Spanish? Right? What was the native language at the time?
That is a very interesting question. I'm glad that you asked. Um, the native people, from my research, a lot of times we like to paint a broad brush and we say, okay, Native Americans, right? But there were several different communities of Native Americans. When Columbus came to the Caribbean, and along with other Spaniards and conquistadors, as we have come to call them, when they came to that region, they discovered that in order for them to travel, in order for them to actually communicate with these people, to trade with them, to learn about their culture and about their history, they needed to be able to speak the language. And in the beginning, it wasn't. Uh, they kind of tried to communicate just by um, signs.
Sure, sure, sure.
Like yeah, they tried to do it in a very simple manner. But the most effective way was they would take maybe a handful of people from that community, and they would um, you know try to teach them a little bit of their language.
Sure.
Okay, and then uh, those hand selected persons would be able to um, act as kind of like mediators, as go-betweens, to
I got you.
explain, okay, this is what the uh, the Europeans want. And so what was also interesting is that they did not all speak the same language. There were times when the native people who were traveling with the Europeans, when they got to a new area, they didn't understand the language. So they encountered difficulties as well. So I would be careful to say that there was one language that they spoke.
I got
Uh,
you.
but we do know that there were different communities.
Right.
They didn't even all share the same cultural
Sure.
experience, or the same uh, social dynamics either.
Sure. Let me ask you
But
this:
mhm.
Did so when the Spanish got there and they saw that there were already people there, did they come and take them over and try to enslave the people that were there?
As a matter of fact, yes, that is true. The So you were asking about the Spanish specifically.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So with the Spanish, when the Spanish arrived, um, the one of the things that they were in search of was gold. When Columbus was sent, and not just Columbus, but again, all the conquistadors who followed him, and we would like to think it was just a few of them. No, there were hundreds, of conquistadors, many campaigns that followed Columbus into what was called the New World. When these when they sent these campaigns to the New World, um, we have to understand that the people who traveled to this region, they were not always the wealthiest people, right? In order for them to actually secure a ship, there had to be some kind of investment there, right?
Right.
In order to get the funds to get that ship together, they had to borrow. Some of them had to borrow, and so they were indebted to certain people, certain companies, and they had to pay those debts. And one of the ways they planned to pay those debts was to, when they got to the New World, to actually to start these projects. So one of the main projects they did was mining. They discovered, when they came to the New World, when they came to the Caribbean especially, what was one of the most surprising things they learned was there was gold. There was gold everywhere.
So they,
Um,
hold on, I didn't know this. There's gold in Jamaica.
uh, at the time, and primarily, I would be speaking about places like, I would say, Barbados, places like uh, the island that today we know as Dominican Republic and Haiti. That was really the main. Those are the main locations where the Spanish established their mining projects.
Mm.
Okay, Jamaica, I would actually say not so much. They When they came to these islands, they noticed that gold was plentiful. Um, in some cases, they actually had to ask the natives, where specifically can we find more of this gold. But when they came to these islands, they saw the natives wearing gold.
I
Okay,
got
so
you.
there had to be a source of this gold. Where
So
is it? They want to know, where are these mines. They saw gold in the rivers. Imagine going to some new place, and seeing that the gold today. Imagine seeing
oh
gold in the
yeah, yeah,
rivers.
right, right.
I mean, you would say, "Hey,
Right.
this is paradise. This is heaven."
Let me
Just
ask you
floating
this. So
around.
now they come to I want and be specific, I guess, to Jamaica only in this regard. So they come to Jamaica, and then when do they start saying that we can start harvesting different crops, such as sugar cane, and you can tell us what those crops were
Mhm.
that then necessitated for them to import slaves to help grow and harvest those crops.
With the Caribbean, however, we find that there was more of an investment in certain other crops, such as tobacco, right? Such as indigo, such as um, uh, what was actually big at that time was sugar.
Yeah, sugar
So,
cane, right?
right, so sugar. Even now in Jamaica, if you go there, you'll see that sugar cane, it's everywhere.
Right,
People,
I got you. I got you.
what I'm saying? Like the sugar that we consume today, a lot of it comes from sugar cane.
Right.
Okay.
Is there a date, a year that they identify as the first year that slaves arrived there from Africa?
The 16th century is when slaves were brought with the early Spanish colonizers, and particularly in 1534, there was a colonizer by the name of Pedro Mezuelo, sorry, and he was Spanish, and he brought 30 African people from the Canary Islands. So the Canary Islands, that is actually a group of islands located on the west coast of Africa. Um, and the sailors who traveled to the New World, that's actually the location where they took off from in the early part of the slave trade. Not necessarily directly from Europe, but they would first travel to the Canary Islands. Columbus was one of those, and then they would travel straight across the Atlantic Ocean into the New World.
So when slaves got there, um, what or slavery in Jamaica in general, is it the same sense of barbaric treatment of the slaves as you would say here in America, and the same mental games that they played? Is
Like,
that common there too?
so in the Caribbean, slavery, just like in the places like the United States, slavery was a cruel experience. Now, in terms of the severity of slavery, right? Uh, Indeed, it was very severe in the Caribbean. In particular, um, I want to say that the most profitable colonies in the Caribbean were where slavery was the most rampant. Places like Haiti, right? Places like Barbados, places like Jamaica. And that's why we see so many of these insurrections. There was a slave owner in 1837. We know that slavery was so bad because here's a slave owner who said, this is quote, he said, during the existence of slavery, how often I have retired to bed fearing that I should have my throat cut before morning. And now after slavery, he's saying, now the danger is all over. I don't fear any violence now.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So now when we compare the cruelties, right? We learned that with the system of slavery, right? You had the slaves, you had the overseers, right? And you had the masters.
Sure.
The overseers were not necessarily the most educated people in the population. They were people who were like, they were just trying to make some money.
Right. I got you.
They felt as if because they were superior, than the slaves who were under their control, they were entitled to treat them a certain way, right? So now in the Caribbean, in the United States, people who belong to this class, they were referred to in derogatory terms. White trash, that was a very common term used at that time. In Barbados, they called them the Red Shanks. I found that.
These are the overseers.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was very interesting, to
Yes.
compare. Um, and there's something I found too that was interesting. In the Caribbean, when I looked at the statistics of the people who ran away, the runaway, they have these newspapers that advertise so and so ran away, and they have a description of the person. In the majority of these cases, there were more women that ran away than men. Now,
Because of rape.
yes, that's exactly right. Rape in the Caribbean was rampant. Um, Indeed, in the United States, it was also a very great issue. However, in the Caribbean, what we find is that in the importation of slaves into the Caribbean, there were more in the very beginning. There were more men that were imported than women, and then at a certain point in time, prior to 1700, we find that there were more women being imported than men.
Okay.
Okay, and so these women were, uh, a lot of times they became part of the domestic system of slavery, right? They worked in the house in close proximity to the master's family. And that's where we see a lot of these cases of
I got you.
rape and sexual assault.
When if you're a slave in Jamaica and the island is just so big, what do you run to? On the other side of the island or something like that? I mean, different than here in America, the slavery was pretty much dominated in the southern, part of the country. If you
Right.
got north, then you had a shot at it. But the island is so big. What do you do? Like I say, run around on the other side of the island. Is there some difference where some part of it was known to be free, and if you got there, you were okay?
Mm. That's a good question. Um, in terms of again, those who ran away from the plantations, uh, they in Jamaica in particular, and I would actually add a number of other islands to that, especially in the British Isles. Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Dominica, Saint Lucia, Saint Vincent, Grenada. In these in several of these islands, there were communities who established themselves in the mountains, and they were referred to as the Maroon communities. And essentially, these were Africans who abandoned the plantations. They ran away, and they went to live with um, a lot of times with people who are already living in the mountains, native people who, from the time of the Spaniards, who
Sure,
had fled there because they knew. that they can see clearly to the coast. They can see who's coming to invade, and it was a place where they could protect themselves.
Okay, so the mountains is where you tried to get to run up to the
Yes,
mountains.
that's right. And
Um,
in speaking to the role of women, was I think significant too in that sense, in that regard. Uh, Women we find played a major role in the not just the insurrections, but also in these the formation and the maintenance of these maroon communities. We would find that people in these communities came down periodically. They would attack some of the British soldiers, some of the Spanish soldiers who were traveling the roads. They would attack some of these plantations, capture not just um, uh, I would say not just people who were would have been considered like prisoners of war in that sense, but also they would capture women. You know, they would literally capture the African women on these plantations to bring them back. You know, as a way of freeing them. You know,
oh, I got you. I got you.
mhm.
Okay, so beside the weather being so much better on the Caribbean, question is, did the Spaniards and the British use Jamaica as a tourist type vacation island? Is there some of that? And then so they needed so many more servants for the hospitality.
So yes, that is actually something that is not very well spoken about these days. Um, in terms of the history of slavery and the Caribbean connection to not just Europe, but also to um, the United States, we find that there are cases in which, uh, you know, wealthy aristocrats, sorry,
Yes.
wealthy aristocrats from Europe would go to the Caribbean and they would buy these plots of land, right? And they would live there for like a number of years uh, as a way to just make wealth. And at the same time, this was sort of a vacation place for them. There was one English lady who traveled from England to Barbados and who reported that, wow, you know, these people are living lavishly here. Um, and it was literally like the same way, a similar way to where we would
Yes.
see today people taking cruises to,
Sure.
you know, the Caribbean, place like the Bahamas, just to travel and just to, you know, relax.
Yes.
That was very common in those
Sure. So, is there a date, or how did slavery end
Mhm.
in Jamaica?
Okay, so the institution of slavery in Jamaica, it ended through uh, the role of the abolitionist movement in the in Britain. So a lot of times, like in Jamaican history, we learn that this is how the system of slavery ended, right? However, it's important to note that the enslaved also had a role in this process. They had a major role in this process. Um, a lot of the petitions that were sent to the British Parliament were, you know, they were as a result of um, the the work of not just the white abolitionists but the black abolitionists, many of whom had been formerly enslaved. Um, in addition to that, the people of England feared the insurrections. You know, the possibility that um, you know, all of the wealth that had been accumulated over the years, you know, would be lost, and it would be an embarrassment on the nation, right? So I would say all of these factors combined in order
Sure.
to bring about the decline of slavery in Jamaica. Another thing that's important to note is that when slavery was ended, it was it was this process to which the the British government, in order for them to free these enslaved people, they had to provide reparations to the people who were enslaving them.
Okay.
Very interesting. And what was also interesting is that the people who have been enslaved, they had to provide them an extra year to continue to work in slave conditions. Okay, this was a condition of their freedom was that they had to continue to work for the master for a certain amount of time, and then they could be freed. So it wasn't
Wow.
an immediate
Is there a year
emancipation.
that you also celebrate as the end of slavery in Jamaica?
The abolition of slavery in Jamaica, the year that we commonly know, was 1807.
1807. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. So, is there a question that something that I haven't asked you?
More often, it was the case in the Caribbean than in North America that women played prominent roles in the leadership of these revolts. Okay, some served as spiritual guides. Um, they led the people to believe that it was their duty to revolt. In one particular case, there was a band of women who actually insisted that during the time they were going to revolt, everybody who was involved was invincible. They would suffer no pain,
Okay.
and they were able to convince thousands to join the revolt. Um, and we know this because the officers, they noted these things in their journals. So the colonial officials, they said we have to break the spirit of these women. Um, this is why when we look at the history of slavery, a lot of times the uh, the prisoners and um, you know those who had been participating in these revolts, they were published very publicly. Floggings were taking place in the town square, where the women were bringing their goods to the market to sell for their mistresses or for the
Is
white
there,
men.
is there a name or two that is like a Dr. Martin Luther King here in America? Is there a name or two there in Jamaica
Mhm.
that most people know of from slavery, civil rights, all that? Is there somebody that they celebrate?
Oh yes, in Jamaica they have some of the national heroes. That's what we call them. One of the most prominent figures is Queen Nanny. Queen Nanny of the Maroons is what we call her. And in fact, there is a Jamaican dollar with the face of Queen Nanny on there. And there's some other prominent figures. Another one, Paul Bogle. He was involved in the labor struggle, and that was also very significant. It was a sort of a rebellion against uh, the system that had been oppressing the, uh, the people who were of the lower class of Jamaican society.
Well, were either of them assassinated or just lived a long life and were able to carry out their mission?
So Paul Bogle was indeed assassinated. Um, However, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, I don't believe that she was ever caught, and so she kind of has this legendary status about her.
I guess my last question, and you might like this one and find this funny. When we think of Jamaica, we say yeah, man, and whatnot. That dialect. Where does that come from?
I believe that that dialect comes from the combination of course, English and African dialects.
Okay.
And sometimes I hear that also the indigenous Native American languages were also, involved in this process of the creation of what we call patois, or what we also call it's a sort of like a English Creole. It's like a sort of broken English, um, and that's similar to many other communities around the world where African communities have been established and where they have carried some of the dialects of their homeland and combined it with the language where they have been established.
I got you. Well, hey, man, brother, I surely, truly appreciate you coming on Strong Inspirations. You've given us something that I didn't know. and I'm sure a lot of our viewers don't know about the history in the Caribbean and in particular Jamaica. Everybody, this is what we do with Strong Inspirations. I tell you, I give it to you straight, no chaser. It's not me telling it. I let the people who know subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit the notifications, tell other people about Strong Inspirations. You know, definitely read a copy of my book, please. Watch my movie.
Right. Okay. And for those who want to learn more about this subject, about Caribbean history from a Caribbean perspective, I would point to the monumental work Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams, who was a former Prime Minister of Trinidad. And also, I would reference the work of Professor Hilary Beckles, who is the current Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies.
All right. Hey, folks. Woo-wee. Good stuff. I'm on my way to the Caribbean because I got snow outside. I'm out of here. Thank you so very much for being on the show. Everybody, thank you for watching us here at Strong Inspirations once again. Brother, stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, stay well, stay doing what you're doing. I appreciate you. Everybody, we out. Thank you.
All right. Take care.